Hey everybody, Spark might be at a slightly better rate than the other gig services, but it's not really a better service in the long run. As someone who's been doing Spark now for, probably the last 6 months pretty consistently, ever since the UPS gig ended during Christmas, I can say that there's some aspects of it that are worse than the other gig apps, and there's some aspects that are better. One of the things that I don't like about Spark is they have terrible customer service. If you ever have a real issue and you need to talk to somebody, it's really not worth your time, calling in. As you'll get the AI part of it now is the best, but before it was just the call center, and the call center folks have not been helpful in any scenario that I've ever called. It's always been pretty much sticking to corporate policy, and there's no give or anything like that if you're trying to return an order or whatnot. It's just basically all by the book. Also, if you have a spill in your back seat, like I did the other night, and you ask them to give the customer credit, and is there anything you can do for cleanup compensation? They'll just keep you on hold for 15 minutes and then hang up on you. And then you talk to the next person and they're literally laughing about it. And, I get it. It's their job, and they probably don't give a damn about us out there. But you don't have to laugh, on the phone with them while they're telling you about what's going on. That's a real story. That really happened. Anyway, so what's the good parts of Spark, right? You might be thinking like, hey, I'm thinking about doing Spark. So what's the good part? They do have a better rate, generally speaking, than a lot of the other gig apps. Definitely better than DoorDash. I would say frequency is better than Grubhub, unless you're scheduled, and even that's pretty mixed. And I think you do better too on Spark than you will Uber Eats. That's kind of depends. Like I go back and forth on that between the two. So the thing is, though, the more you do it, just like all the gig apps, the more they're going to try to see what they can get out of you and how little you'll do things for. And one thing I've noticed that's different about Spark than all the other apps is that a lot of times the orders that they give to you are exclusively just for you. And the way I came to this conclusion is if you reject one of these offers, especially the ones that are just for you, or whatever, a lot of times they'll come back to you after you've rejected it and they'll add another dollar on, right? You can reject it again and they'll add another dollar on. And they're basically just saying, like, how little is this guy going to work for me? Where the other people will, be offered more money. And you don't know what other people are offered. And you might think like you're in competition with everybody. Sometimes you are. Some of those orders are being seen by other people. But some of the time, they're not. Some of the time, those lowball offers are only being seen by you, and they're trying to see what is the minimum that you will do it for. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of gig economy work, which is really scummy, I think. If you work for these people, you're doing a good job for them, the least they can do is pay you the same for the work you do. But with the gig economy, they're looking to see how little you'll do it for and how little they can pay you, right? So just really frustrating, and unlike a regular W-2 job or even 1099 contract, this gig economy is all about maximizing their profit and not about anything else, not about loyalty, customer service, any of that. You're just a number to them, along with all the other people who do the gig economy stuff, and they'll keep seeing how little you'll do it for until eventually you're just like, I'm not interested in doing it anymore. And I kind of got to that place tonight finally, because my orders had gone from $24, $22 at the beginning for the stuff. And then, I was taking stuff for 19. I was like, oh, that's still cool. I can do it for 19. That's fine. And then, 16. And they start doing these things too, where they'll offer you a low rate and then they'll give the bonus dollars that you'll get during like peak hours, like 5 to 9. And they'll basically tack that on where they subtracted the 6 from your regular rate, but they're giving it back to you as a bonus. It's like some kind of psychological thing where like, oh, well, now you took an order for $16, but there was the added $6 on the side. But now later we're going to try just seeing if you'll take the order for just $16 without the $6. So it's just all these psychological mind games with them. And, tonight they started trying to offer me gigs for $12, $13 for some of the stuff I would have done on a rainy night. Now I'm not even close to the stores because I just ran an order way out west. And I'm just like, no, I'm not interested. And so I reject it, the $12 one. Guess what? They come back to me a couple minutes later, $13 for the exact same order. I say, no, $14. So it's just a scummy bit of process. And you can reject 3 times and they'll keep, sending the extra dollar on there because they have that money on their account. They have that in their pocket to pay out. They just want to keep it for themselves and see how little you'll work for Spark. So that's sort of the Spark experience. Some of the good things about Spark is you're going to go pick up 3 orders at a store or do an express shop or something for more than one person. So, you can make a decent amount of money when you do get good orders, usually during rush hour on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, especially. Where you're not wondering what your next order is going to be through like Spark or Grubhub. So there's a little bit more like certainty to it, which is nice. But overall, it's just the same scummy stuff as all the other gig apps out there. So I've been looking at other things to do. Looking at other jobs. There's also things like TaskRabbit I've learned about, so I got signed up for that. Yet to kind of start with them, but I got my training stuff done recently, so my next video very well could be on TaskRabbit, as they're supposed to pay more than Spark even. So I kind of feel like Spark pays the best, but it's the same tactics as DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats in the long run. But I think they try to be somewhat competitive and just like edge out what the competitors are doing. But in this time of rising gas prices are like $4.39 here now. I've heard up to $6 in California, where I know people who live out there. Things are more expensive than ever, and they're trying to pay less. For people who have been doing a good job, good work for them, and I pretty much work consistently for them. Almost every day. Every evening. I don't like to work long hours, but I like to work consistent hours. So I'll work like 4 or 5 hours a night and just do that every night. And then, you have a lot of the day to do whatever you need to, and that kind of helps cover some of the basics while you're trying to figure other things out. But anyway, so yeah, I just finally got to that place with them. I bet that if I got another account, used a different phone number, used an alias or something like that, and signed up with them, that might be hard to do because I'm sure they have verification. They want to know that you're a real person and all that. But I bet you, or if you're someone else out there who came to this market and did it, and I started a brand new account, I would be making more money. I bet you anything. They'd be paying probably, who knows, $25 to $30 probably for the orders I'm taking for 22 and 24, 23. And the thing is, I'll reject a lot of orders. So I do say no to a lot of stuff, and I try to be real particular. But then you end up sitting in your car for 30 minutes and you're not doing anything. So it's kind of this sort of this tug of war. I guess you can work for another app. You can, and I've done this sometimes where like I'll run Uber Eats in the background and just take a Uber Eats after I do the Spark and kind of go back and forth. Especially if you're like out on a farther remote and you want to get back into town, maybe you pick up an Uber Eats and then head back in off that. But yeah, I don't know, man. I really feel like there should be some reform with Uber Eats. Like someone needs to do something in Congress where they need to pay a minimum wage to people, or pay an hourly wage and no more of this contract stuff, because it's just predatory. They're doing it. If they're doing it to me, they're doing it to everybody. So anyway, that's sort of my take on Spark. There's some good things about it. If you're thinking about doing it, you've been doing some of the other gig apps, you've been doing DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, whatever, I would say give Spark a try. If you're in a market with lots of Walmarts and Home Depots and stuff, I would say try it. But if you're not, then yeah, probably not going to be the one to use if you don't have Walmarts around you. If you're not, though, you might look at things like TaskRabbit, like I'm looking at. If you, especially if you have an IKEA around you, they're kind of synonymous with doing building furniture and things for IKEA. Is sort of what I've heard about them. But I guess they also are getting into like independent furniture construction for folks. And then there's also other things on there too, like if you want to help someone move. I saw something for PC repair, so that's sort of interesting as well. Anyway, sort of getting off topic, but that's my basic overview of Spark. I guess I could give you a couple of like best practices that I've learned from doing Spark for a while now. One of the things I've learned is if you're taking an offer and it's a multiple stop offer, so let's say it's a 4-stop offer. One, you're going to the store, so that's your first stop, and then you have 3 stops after that where you're just taking groceries from Walmart and you're going to drop them off at someone's house. Look at your markers and make sure that there's actually 3 stops after the store. One thing I've noticed is if it says it's a 3 stop after you go to the store, so a 4 stop altogether, and one of them's missing, so you only see 2 markers, that means that one of the addresses was malformed, or misformed. Or that basically what happens is the person puts in their address and they'll put in like instructions in the address line. So they'll put like, I'm in the second floor, red door, after their address. So 123 Example Street. And, red door with the welcome mat is in the address. If they do that, those miles aren't added to your total miles through Spark. So that last stop is not included in the miles for, what you're going to be doing. So you're not seeing the whole picture. So warning, and this has happened to me, if you don't have all your markers on the map, be wary about the offer, because that last drop could be way across town. It could be double your miles or more. And that's happened to me. Actually, one time there was an extra 25 or 26 miles, going way up to an adjacent city that wasn't listed because I didn't notice that somebody had put, apartment, such and such in the address line. It wasn't that though. It was like, last on the right or something like that in the address line, which screws up the Spark application. It doesn't tell you the total miles. So be careful for that. The other thing I'll say is if you're going to be doing a shop and it's late at night, look at the items on your list and make sure you don't have things like Mucinex or things that need an ID, especially if you're not close to your house. So if you're taking a Walmart order across town, be careful of that, because what can happen is if you're doing a really late night order and you're getting to someone's house at 10:30, 11, they could be asleep and they're not going to answer the door, or they could be out of the house. You have to get an ID for those orders, and you'll have to return that order if they can't give you the ID. And this has actually happened to me. It wasn't only that they didn't, I called the person, they said they couldn't come, they weren't at the house right then, so they weren't able to verify the ID, and, so I had to return it. She also went in and canceled that order, before I could drop it off after talking to her on the phone. So then you have to return the order to the Walmart. Well, guess what? If it's after 10 o'clock, the Walmart's drop-off center, their delivery to us basically, and the parking lot is closed. It closes at 10, at least in my part of the world. So that means you got to go back the next day. You got to drive all the way back across town and give those groceries back to Walmart, where they're just going to throw those groceries away. I don't know if you guys know that, but when you return an order from Spark to Walmart, those things all get thrown away. I found that out through one of the managers at Walmart. So yeah, they're just throwing the shit away. And, unless you do that, you're basically, your Spark app is tied up, where if you don't do that, you don't get a code verified from the employee that you drop it back off, you're basically locked out of your account. You can't do any more work. So for that reason, if you're doing shops and it has any kind of medicine in it, stay close to home, first of all. First of all, I'd say don't take it, especially if it's an across-town order. But if you are going to take an order that has medicine in it, make sure it's close to home. So if you have to go back and return it because they didn't answer the door or whatever, they're asleep, and they're not going to, give you the code or your ID basically that you have to verify, you're not stuck driving across town the next day. Anyway, that was one of the more frustrating experiences I've had, having to drive back across town to return an order that they didn't even have in the system. That's the real kicker, is since the customer canceled the order, they didn't even have it in the system. They didn't even know who I was, so I had to wait a day or two for Spark, basically customer service, to push that back through. I told them the name of the person I dropped it off with, but they said, and at the Walmart I went to, they had no record of that customer, ever ordering anything, because they had canceled the order when I went to their house, when I would talk to them on the phone. So that was super frustrating. So those are the biggest 2 tips, I will say. Generally speaking, you'll make more money too if you don't do express shops or regular shopping. Actually, when I first started, I had a lot of problems with that system working for me. The scanner the first time didn't work, but later on, it seemed to work, especially with the express shops, and I started having some luck. But I had all kinds of bugs and stuff. I use a Google Pixel 6, so I don't know if you have a Google Pixel, phone, but for me, that's been semi-problematic until recently with Spark. But anyway, what I'm saying is, if you can get out of doing the express shops and the regular shopping and just do the picking up from Walmart and delivering it, generally you'll make more money. It takes less time. Unless you have a really slow Walmart that's making you sit in their parking lot for 30 minutes, which has happened to me on the weekends especially, you'll generally make more money. And I guess that could be my final little tip for Spark. Know the stores. Some of them on certain days of the week are slow. Like I have one near me that's really slow on Saturday, and because they're backed up, they don't have enough staff. There's other stores I go to that have different rules. Like I go to a store in a different part of town that doesn't want me to help them, take the bags and put them in the car. Where the other stores are like thrilled when I offer to like, hey, let me help you. I'll put some of the order in the mid row and you put it in the back for the second person. And for whatever reason, this is a real strict Walmart, and their management says, don't let the customer help. So, that one is okay, though. They're generally a little quicker than the store on Saturday that's really slow near me. But yeah, so the stores have different strengths and weaknesses as far as their timeliness. A lot of times the grocery store ones, the ones that are the neighborhood Walmarts, those are a lot faster than the regular Walmarts just because there's less people going to them and there's less product to choose from. So generally, if you can find like one of those neighborhood local Walmarts and you're running orders, those are usually pretty good. So if you can go hit one of those, if you have one of those in your town, try to go hit that up because generally they're a little less busy, they're a little faster, and you're mostly going to get grocery stuff. That's another thing too. On shops, if you're doing express shop or shopping yourself and then delivering, if you get stuff like clothes, you get stuff like toys, some medicine stuff is kind of a pain too, or makeup for me. Anything like that usually slows you down a lot. You're going to be really searching for those items where like groceries you get used to, kind of know where things are, goes a lot quicker. But like if someone wants a certain t-shirt or a blouse or something like that, I get a lot of women's apparel too, of various types. That usually takes a lot longer. So if you see an order just packed full of jewelry and stuff that's not normally in the grocery section, and you're not familiar with Walmarts, or don't do a lot of shopping at Walmarts where you know everything, where it all is, I'd suggest maybe not taking that order. It's going to take you longer. So anyway, hopefully that's been helpful. I didn't expect to do kind of the old tips and tricks part of the video, but if you stuck around this late in the video, then I guess you get that bonus. So anyway, good luck to you if you're doing Spark. Just keep in mind, your first months, your probably first 4 or 5 months, probably be your best, and then when you get into your later months, it's going to be more of a struggle. You're going to be basically fighting against Walmart, who's constantly trying to lower your rate, and you're going to be tempted to take the lower rate sometimes because you're sitting around in your car, or they're giving you those bonus dollars on top of the lower rate, so it makes you think, oh, well, it's the same rate. But it's a psychological manipulation where they're trying to then later offer you that same rate, that same lower rate without the bonus dollars to see if you'll take it. So anyway, that's the Spark experience in 2026. Hopefully yours is, better than mine. But honestly, it's just kind of frustrating working for them. And I can't wait to do something else. So that's sort of my take on Spark. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate it. You can leave a thumbs up on the video if this has been some way informative for you. And come check out another video soon. I think I'm probably going to be looking at TaskRabbit next and seeing what I think about them. All right, take care.